The Bible describes Africa's origins. The Bible contains more than just infallible wisdom. These are tales woven together with colorful strands from any nations, civilizations, and ethnic groups. One of these is the biblical story's ongoing influence from Africans' notable presence. The Bible has references to Africa from its first chapters to its last lines. Think about the land of Cush, which is referenced in Genesis 13, and is frequently understood to be a region of Africa south of Egypt, maybe modern-day Sudan. Africans are Noah's offspring. Because of the Great Deluge and the ark he built, the majority of us are familiar with Noah. However, what transpired when the flood waters subsided is an even more fascinating aspect of his tale. Through Shem, Ham, and Japheth, his three sons, the world was once again filled. Let's talk about Ham. The descendants of each of Noah's sons are described in detail in the Bible's book of Genesis. Genesis 10:6 says of Ham, "The sons of Ham were Cush, Egypt, Phut, and Canaan." Upon closer examination of these names, however, a number of biblical scholars claim that Cush alludes to the area south of ancient Egypt, encompassing portions of present-day Sudan. Egypt is quite simple. It alludes to Egypt, a country in North Africa that is both old and modern. Phut is thought to symbolize portions of North Africa, potentially including the area that is now Libya. Although it is not directly connected to the center of Africa, Canaan is a region in the ancient Near East that includes parts of western Jordan and Syria, Israel, Palestine, and Lebanon today. The lineage of Cush is now further described in Genesis 10:7, where it states, "The sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabteka." Sheba and Dedan were Rama's sons. Similar names to Seba and Havilah are connected to specific African regions or tribes. Essentially, through their son Ham, many African nations may trace their history back to Noah. Isn't it wonderful to consider how intertwined humanity is? The world was repopulated from a single family aboard an ark, and large, prosperous, and varied continents emerged. The stories of Noah, Ham, and their offspring serve as a reminder that no matter who we are or where we've come from, we are all connected by a shared past. In this instance, the ark builder Noah is at the center of the story for a great number of Africans. Egypt is where Abraham was. Adam and Eve lived in Eden for many generations. Abraham was one of their offspring and a man of unshakable faith. However, life's unforeseen turns brought about a terrible famine in Canaan, compelling Abraham to look for food in other places. And there was a famine in the land, and Abraham went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. 12:10 in Genesis. In these dire times, Egypt, an ancient African culture, offered hope. It offered safety with its abundant riches and the nutritious waters of the Nile. But there were challenges along the way. Abraham begged his wife Sarah to pretend to be his sister, because he was afraid for his safety, because of her beauty. Abraham's destiny would become even more entwined with the Egyptians through a sequence of events that followed this act of deception. Genesis 12:11-20, Joseph, rescued from slavery and saved. A noteworthy individual whose life became intricately linked to Egypt was Joseph, the great-grandson of Abraham. His is a tale of betrayal and salvation. Due to jealousy, Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery by misinterpreting his dreams, which included insightful prophecies. After that, they threw him into the pit, which was devoid of anything. It contained no water. After paying 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites for Joseph, they transported him to Egypt. Genesis 37:24-28. However, the place that would have served as Joseph's prison ended up serving as his stage for glory. Joseph's dream-interpreting skills brought him before Pharaoh in Egypt, where he overcame false charges and imprisonment. And with that, a young Hebrew slave became Egypt's second most powerful man and helped prevent a 7-year famine from spreading throughout the region. Genesis 39 to 41. The connection that exists between the African continent and the scriptures is evidence of the interdependence of all humankind. Exodus and Moses. One of the main stories in the Bible is the one about Moses and the Exodus. It depicts the Israelites' flight to the Promised Land and their eventual release from the oppressive rule of the Egyptians. Egypt is in Africa. Thus the story also offers a fascinating look how Africans are portrayed in the Bible. The Israelites were numerous and prosperous in Egypt. However, the Pharaoh of Egypt enslaved them out of concern for their numbers. He commanded that all newborn Hebrew boys be thrown into the Nile River out of fear of a potential revolt. An Israelite mother gave birth to a son during this period, and she spent 3 months hiding him to keep him safe. Hebrews 11:23. She made a basket, put her infant inside, and hid him amid the reeds by the Nile River, because she could no longer conceal him. When the Pharaoh's daughter saw the youngster, she was moved by his kindness and took him in. She named him Moses, meaning I drew him out of the water. Genesis 10. Although Moses was born in Israel, he grew up in an Egyptian royal family and was exposed to both the customs and benefits of African royalty. God called Moses to be a leader and the liberator of the Israelites as he matured. God descended upon Egypt in the form of 10 plagues when Pharaoh refused to release the Israelites. Ultimately, Pharaoh was forced to free the Israelites due to the severity of these plagues and the death of his firstborn son. Pharaoh decided to change his mind and follow the Israelites with his army as they left Egypt. The Israelites felt imprisoned, with the Egyptian army behind them and the Red Sea in front of them. However, God produced one of the most spectacular miracles in the Bible through Moses. God parted the sea by Moses' outstretched hand, producing a dry way. The Israelites made their way across without incident. As the Egyptians came after them and entered, the waves reappeared as the Egyptian army chased them into the sea, engulfing them all. And the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Exodus 14:30. The Bible makes several references to Ethiopia's territories, sometimes known as Cush, and its inhabitants, the Cushites. Now let's examine the 3 major stories about the Cushites. Sheba's queen pays King Solomon a visit. The Queen of Sheba made the decision to put King Solomon to the test by asking him challenging questions after learning of his renown and knowledge. She set off for Jerusalem, intrigued, and bringing a large caravan full of gifts of rare stones, gold, and spices. When she arrived, she asked Solomon her questions, and Solomon answered them all without hesitation. His intellect, the opulence of his palace, the organization of his officials, and the rituals in the Lord's home all left the queen speechless. She told King Solomon, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes." 1 Kings 10:6-7. The Queen of Sheba received what she asked for and more from King Solomon in exchange for what he had given from his royal bounty. After that, she and her entourage left for their home country. Jeremiah is saved by the Cushite Ebed-Melech. Jeremiah prophesied the fall of Jerusalem during a difficult time for Israel. This is why those who disagreed with his message dug a deep, muddy hole for him to die in. He sank down into the muck. When word got out about Jeremiah's fate, Ebed-Melech, an Ethiopian official in King Zedekiah's royal palace and a Cushite, was informed. "My lord, the king, these men have acted wickedly in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet," he replied, approaching the monarch with deep anxiety. "He will starve to death in the cistern where they have cast him." 38-9 Jeremiah. Moved by Ebed-Melech's pleading, King Zedekiah gave him the order to gather 30 soldiers and drag Jeremiah out of the cistern before he drowned. Jeremiah was spared death by the bravery and kindness of Ebed-Melech. The early Christian convert, the Ethiopian eunuch. An angel told Philip, one of the first Christian missionaries, to head south to the road that led from Jerusalem to Gaza. There he met an Ethiopian eunuch, a high-ranking official in charge of the Ethiopian queen's money. The eunuch, bewildered by a particular passage, was reading aloud from the book of Isaiah. Asking whether he understood what he was reading, Philip walked up to him. "How can I, unless someone explains it to me?" The eunuch retorted, Acts 8:31. After that, Philip clarified the verse and showed how it related to Jesus. When they came to some water on their journey, the eunuch said he wanted to be baptized. "Look, water right here. What may prevent me from receiving baptism?" Acts 8:36. After Philip baptized him, the Spirit of the Lord abruptly carried Philip away as they emerged from the water. Nevertheless, Philip showed up at Azotus and proceeded to preach the word in every place until he arrived in Caesarea. Acts 8:39. Joyful. The eunuch resumed his journey and became one of the first Africans to be officially documented as a Christian conversion. The Bible, while set primarily in the ancient Near East, makes numerous references to neighboring regions and peoples, including several in Africa. This vast continent has a rich history intertwined with biblical events. In the New Testament, there's a touching story about an African man named Simon. As Jesus was being led to his crucifixion, he was weakened from torture and struggled to carry the heavy wooden cross to Golgotha. At this moment, Simon, an African from Cyrene, was pulled from the crowd by Roman soldiers and compelled to carry Jesus' cross. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. The mention of Simon's sons, Alexander and Rufus, suggests they might have been known to the early Christian community. This brief but significant encounter illustrates the universality of Jesus' message, reaching across continents and cultures. Africa holds a notable place in the biblical narrative, from powerful nations like Libya to individual encounters like that of Simon of Cyrene. The Bible's African connections showcase the continent's integral role in the unfolding of God's story. Africa as a place of refuge. Throughout history, various nations and continents have served as havens for those in need of safety and refuge. Among such places, Africa, specifically Egypt, has a unique role within biblical narratives. At different times, it has offered solace to key biblical figures. One notable instance is the Holy Family's flight to Egypt. In the days following Jesus' birth, an angel appeared to Joseph in a dream, warning him of impending danger from King Herod, who sought to kill the newborn Messiah. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said. "Take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you. For Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I call my son." Matthew 13-15. Joseph, Mary, and Jesus found refuge in Egypt, sheltered from Herod's murderous intent. In this narrative, Egypt becomes a place of sanctuary, shielding the Holy Family from danger and ensuring the survival of the young Jesus. Fulfilling prophecy. Unlike the story of the Holy Family, where Egypt was a divine haven, in Jeremiah's story, it was a destination chosen out of fear and disobedience to God's will. Despite the contrasting reasons for their journeys, both the Holy Family and Jeremiah found themselves in Africa during times of crisis. Egypt, as part of this great continent, played a pivotal role in their life stories. These narratives remind us of the intricate ties between sacred history and geographical landscapes, and how places can become sanctuaries in times of peril. Beyond these glimpses, Africans played essential roles in the formation and propagation of early Christianity. One vivid example is the Ethiopian eunuch, a high official under the Queen of the Ethiopians, who encountered Philip the Evangelist. Thanks for watching. Do well to subscribe so you get notified at every updates.